The first thing I want to ask you is, respectively, how you're using FormAssembly at your organizations. Megan, I know, your department specifically focused on prospective students, but I also know that University of Wisconsin-Madison is looking at other processes. Maybe you can expand just a bit on where you're seeing, the future of your use too.
Yeah, definitely. So we started using FormAssembly just with our unit with like a one-seat single-person license back in like 2018 to power all of our registration forms for, you can think of all of these online professional programs or hybrid programs, hundreds of info sessions. But in 2025, we moved to an enterprise license. So some of the other orgs, Salesforce orgs on our campus are using it for internal case management. They're using it for kind of edge cases to manage non-credit course registration. So when the system doesn't work, the primary system doesn't work exactly as they need it, we have this tool to manage some of those those edge cases. And then, some orgs are using it for their their online RFI forms. And we also use it for our web-to-case forms for student support.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, and thank you for that. One of my favorite things as I talk to more customers is so many people start very similarly to your university, where it's like, hey, we've got one thing and one person that's in charge of that thing. And then slowly discovering that, oh, we could build a little bit more on these processes, especially if we can get data into Salesforce so seamlessly. Yolanda, tell us a little bit about Pearson, how Pearson's using FormAssembly.
Yeah, absolutely. FormAssembly has been the Pearson primary enterprise approved form tool since 2018. It's primarily used by our teams for building forms and integrating them to systems like Salesforce, MS Excel, etc. It's the form tool of choice due to its security features. And our teams primarily use it for marketing lead generation. So we send leads into Salesforce, attach them to campaigns. It's also used for customer service. So we get some user rights requests that come in, and we use FormAssembly to create a case that's then picked up by our service team. FormAssembly has been really appreciated by many of our teams just with its automation features, being able to automatically update a opportunity or automatically assign a lead to a given queue. So I think the complexity in the conditional logic and those advanced features is one of the biggest practical use cases for our teams here.
Okay, very interesting. And for people who aren't familiar with Pearson, as soon as I mentioned Pearson to my wife that your organization was coming on, she's like, oh, well, we use their products. She's a former teacher. Could you describe kind of your department of Pearson, what they do in your space?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have many divisions and lines of businesses here. For example, our higher education team, our clinical team, and our schools and English language learning teams. All of these teams use FormAssembly in different ways for their business. So perhaps the English language team, they're trying to have a contact us form on their website that'll kind of direct learners who are focusing on English language learning, whereas the higher ed team may have something that'll help their educators be able to submit more information, maybe download a demo, or just get in touch with a sales rep. So depending on the line of business and the particular team they're on, they all use FormAssembly, but for their own marketing campaigns and purposes.
Okay, fantastic, and thank you for that. Yeah, a lot of lines of business. Pearson, a big organization in education. And Katie, why don't you tell us a little bit about how Cargill's using FormAssembly? I think that's a name that a lot of people have as well.
Yeah, so for those who don't know Cargill, so Cargill is a global food and agriculture company, and one of the unique things about our business is how embedded we are in everyday products. So for example, we supply all the salt to Chipotle for Chipotle chips, all the eggs to McDonald's, and even we provide all the beef hides that make MLB baseballs. So from a marketing and commercial standpoint, we use FormAssembly primarily for first-party data capture on our website, so primarily the Contact Us forms and inquiry forms. These forms are really our front door to work with Cargill. 95% of our new leads come through our Contact Us forms, and we receive over 4,000 inquiries a year. And with a relatively small BDR, or business development rep team, we must be very intentional about how we manage that volume. So FormAssembly really helps us do three key things. First is route inquiries to the right team, the BDRs or our distribution team. Second, it helps us pre-qualify leads so that our BDRs can prioritize the high value opportunities. And then third, automate follow-up for both qualified and unqualified submissions. So for us, it's less about just collecting data and more about controlling the flow and demand, and making sure that the right opportunities get attention quickly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And wow, we didn't rehearse the introduction of the industries or the organization here, and I am fascinated. I love Chipotle's chips, and the salt is like one of my favorite parts. Also, that like hint of lime, I think. Really cool to know where that's coming from. Thank you all. And you also kind of proved my point there. A Contact Us form mentioned in several different capacities here, but also the behind the scenes where that information is going, very different. So thank you for that. I also appreciate, just as a FormAssembly employee, that you all have talked about how FormAssembly is helping, but we'll also talk about, you know, where you could see us helping more. We'll get some real feedback in a little bit. But first I wanted to talk about, you know, the theme of today's conference is designing the future of data collection. And the future of every industry seems to have been, well, the 5-year plans that we had maybe in 2020, well, no 5-year plan really survived that year, but the future looks different, I think, today than it did even a year ago. I wanted to ask, you know, what kind of trends are you seeing in your industry when it comes to either data collection or how Salesforce is being used? And I'd love to, you know, touch on if you're considering Agentforce, if you're finding applications for Agentforce, we'd love to touch on that a little bit. Yolanda, here, I'll popcorn this to you. How's Pearson? Where's Pearson seeing trends in data collection going? Oh, Yolanda, I think you might be muted.
Can you hear me okay now?
We can.
Awesome. Yeah, I think reporting is something that's been voiced a lot by our teams, being able to have good quality data. And so, for example, we have an interesting project here at, in this next year where our leads, their lead statuses are different teams are using different values for those lead statuses. It's maybe not as standardized, and there's a lot of them. So one of the things we're doing is streamlining those lead statuses so that our teams can be standardized and there can be more actionable results and reporting on those leads across teams. So that's just one example of how we're trying to standardize and to align teams, and then also being able to collect better data through our forms. So we actually had a conversation with our FACSM recently on like, hey, we have a lot of forms that are already connected to these old lead status values. What can we do to you know, update these once these new values come along and be able to capture more aligned data across teams using FormAssembly and Salesforce?
Yeah, you know, I think that visibility kind of component has been a discussion topic, a major trend, especially around Salesforce over the last couple of years, where it's like, hey, we need standardization so we can see exactly, you know, volume-wise, the number of leads, whether those leads are going to your point earlier, different lines of business. We need to see growth across the organization. And it can be difficult to do that if you don't start standardizing.
Yeah, and we've done that with quite a few things as well, like with our opportunity stages as well. So just trying to get that better quality across all the things that our teams work with.
Yeah, oh man, revisiting opportunity records and opportunity stages is one of those very scary Salesforce projects. It's like, oh, it's been this way for so long. Megan, I know that the higher education space especially has been seeing a lot of, I don't want to call it turmoil because there's opportunities, but student demographics are shifting. You know, the way that you deliver education has seen some major shifts over the last couple of years. Anything that you're tracking in 2026 that you'd want to call out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, this one's kind of hard to answer because the industry of education is so broad, and I see such a small part of it on a daily basis with professional degrees and online undergraduate degrees and such. But in terms of like trends of how people use or expectations when they're filling out a form, so when we're gathering that information from folks, I always have our marketing team in the back of my mind of like, how can we make this questionnaire or this survey as short as possible. And so we have a very short RFI form, but we have a secondary form. So like they get when they hit a submit. We don't use FormAssembly for our RFIs, but we have this like secondary form, and no one really ever figures out the completes the second form that gives like share more information of why you're pursuing this degree, what questions do you have, that type of thing. So actually for 2026, we're launching a new way of collecting that data where we're actually sending a unique FormAssembly survey to them in that welcome email. You know, you fill out RFI and you get that welcome email. So there's going to be a FormAssembly form that's unique to their contact ID and their opportunity record, and all of that data is hidden. So they're only seeing 2 questions really, and hopefully they'll be able to do it on their mobile devices really easily. And so we're excited to see how much more, hopefully more of that more qualified data, because we're doing more, or, we're doing the same amount of recruitment with less staff. And so having that more information from students of what they're looking for helps to prioritize the work of our enrollment coaches, and to kind of focus on the students that are asking the extra questions and are sharing more about what they're interested in.
Yeah, and you're not the only university I've heard mention that. You're engaging more, you're personalizing the experiences more, and that's great to hear. That's kind of the win. AI can be a controversial subject. It can seem very impersonal, but in some ways, it allows universities, that are considering Agentforce for some of those applications to personalize experiences a little bit more, and cross that digital divide where students don't feel as engaged in some respects. Fascinating stuff, but very cool future use case. Katie, what are you thinking for the future? What's Cargill see?
Yeah, so one of the biggest trends that we're seeing is a shift from manual data entry to more automated data capture and enrichment, really from AI. So historically, sales teams have been responsible for entering and maintaining data in systems like Salesforce, and that's changing really quickly. Like, I'm going to throw something out there, but I believe sometime in the future that salespeople won't even need to be using Salesforce anymore. We're going to be able to capture data with tools like meeting transcription and AI-driven enrichment. More of that data can now be captured automatically instead of relying on a human to input that into Salesforce. So, and at the same time too, there's also a growing emphasis on first-party data and data governance. So as tracking becomes more restricted, like removing cookies, companies are relying more heavily on data that they collect via these forms, like that FormAssembly provides. So where it gets interesting for us is the intersection of those trends. So forms are still a key entry point for first-party data, but that data is increasingly being augmented and validated more automatically. And expectations for data quality, like the 2 other presenters here had mentioned too, is much higher. So I think the future is less about collecting more data and more about collecting the right data and making it actionable immediately.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I wonder if Salesforce's strategy is also kind of coming around to that idea. They are really promoting that Slack integration where, sales teams are kind of dealing with customer data outside of the Salesforce ecosystem, but inside of Slack, which is obviously a Salesforce product, and maybe they're not logging in day to day. It's very interesting time.
Yeah, it's changing fast.
Yeah. Agreed. And thank you each for giving, I love getting these different perspectives from these different places, like different